Every decision that you ever make in your life has consequences. There are good consequences and there may be bad consequences, but every decision that you make has a consequence. I grew up in a small textile town in Georgia. My mother then was the only breadwinner in the family. There wasn't a lot of income. I hauled groceries on a bicycle in them when I was 10 to 12 and delivering them around town. And then as I was in high school, they had a program at the textile mill where you could work 4 hours and go to school. But when I applied, then all of those positions were filled. I talked to them and they said, well, if you quit school, and I'll hire you tomorrow. So I did. I dropped out of high school in the 10th grade. Within 6 months, I was weaving the cloth with the looms. So then that's about the time, and I looked around, and the only place to go from here is fixing those looms. And that was 50, 60-year-old guys that had been working there most of their life. And I thought to myself, I don't know if I really want to do this for the rest of my life. And so I went and talked to a Navy recruiter and signed me up. Went through basic training up in Bainbridge, Maryland. And out of basic training, I wanted to be in aviation. I told them I wanted to be in aviation, so they designated me as going into the aviation field. The Navy was so very good for me because I didn't have a problem with the learning a trade, and I didn't have a problem taking the test. And I was now stationed at VFP 63 at Miramar. And there was a senior chief that had just come from the Bureau of Naval Personnel. And he knew that I was going to college at night. So he said, there's a new program coming out. Said, why don't you apply for it? And I said, well, what is it? He said, it's the Associate Degree Completion Program. It's where the Navy took 75 enlisted people out of the Navy from various and sundry rates, and they put us in a junior college with the idea of getting an associate degree. Well, I went to Mount San Antonio Junior College, and I was promoted now to Chief Petty Officer while I was there. And I was also picked up for the warrant program, so I went into school as a first-class petty officer and left as a W-1. And then I went to Fleet Air Support Unit in Da Nang. And when I left Da Nang, they had another program that they had put together called a Degree Completion Program. And so I was selected for that, and I went to San Diego State and finished up a baccalaureate degree. I worked my ass off and to study and to learn and to believe that I could do this. There is a result of a decision I made to go see that Navy recruiter. I spent a great life in the Navy. In 1980, I ran into Jerry Tucker, who was had been in the F-8 RAG with him. I knew him, Turkey, and I met him down at MCRD one evening, and we were just talking back and forth, and he said, Al, you should apply for the Blue Angels. I said, I never even thought about it. But then I did, so I applied. And then you do this typical go and visit with the team and get to know them, and they get to know you, and they put you in the public situation and whether or not you go embarrass yourself with them. And then at the end of the time, and they determine it, and so they call you up and said, well, you didn't make it. And then all of a sudden, in a loud roar, welcome aboard, a-hole. And so that was the beginning of one of the most memorable times in my naval career. It was the time that I spent with the Blue Angels. We had a total of 75 people in the squadron maintenance. We took 25 on the road and left 50 at home. I traveled every week with the team. I traveled. Of course, anything that happened, we were there working on it, and it's a team. It isn't like you have a electronics technician and you have a hydraulics technician and they're separate. What you have is, if you have an engine change, everybody's involved. I mean, you focus on it, you get the job done. And the kind of people that are desired and selected in the Blues are the stars in the fleet. They're some of the best mechanics in the Navy and technicians. And so you take the superstars out of the fleet and you put the superstars together, now you got a whole nother pecking order. But then everybody comes together as a team. It's exhilarating working with those caliber of people. You have to understand that the Blue Angels are a unique organization in so many ways. And so you're striving for perfection at all times, at all levels. And I can remember an incident. We were in Dayton, Ohio. We were out doing morning turns. We found a problem with the number 5 jet engine mount. Now, it was safe to fly, but it wasn't something that I wanted to have in a demonstration when they were doing max performance and G's and et cetera. So I called up the ops officer and I said, you know, we need to go and get the spare from Pensacola. So Scott Anderson was his narrator at the time. Scott came out, took 5 jet, headed for Pensacola, where we'd alerted them in Pensacola that they were coming. So when he arrived, they had the airplane ready to go. Drop tanks are on it, you know, it's ready to go. He jumped out of the 5 jet, jumped into this one. In the meantime, Randy Clark, who was a former narrator, had stepped over and took up the narration and narrated the walk down with 5 people walking, 5 airplanes. And as he's doing this, Scott Anderson's landing behind the crowd in that jet. He's met there with the crew. They dropped the tanks off it, configured the airplane for the air show, and the Marine C-130 people picked up Scott and took him in the car over to the podium. He stepped up on the podium, taking the mic from Pogo, and continued the narration. Pogo jumps up in the car, goes back over, it's all ready for him. We put him in the airplane. He made about the 3rd maneuver in the air show. So we started with 5 and ended with 6, and nobody ever realized that that's what happened. It's just one of those things where they just do the job well, really well. In 1981, we were in Washington, and we were going down to see the Secretary of Defense. Caspar Weinberger was his name at the time. While we were sitting in that place, I spent a lot of time with the flight surgeon. You know, we were on the ground together, and et cetera, and that. And he and I were sitting alongside one another while we were there. Kevin Wan was his name. And he said to me, he said, you know, while we were in the Pentagon, we should just go see the Secretary of the Navy. I said, Doc, you don't just walk off the street and into Secretariat's office. He said, well, I write him letters all the time. I said, well, does he answer you? He said, oh yeah. I said, I was on the carrier with him. Said, then, you know, I was a flight surgeon on an air group, and said, I've done prostate exams on him a number of times. I mean, we kind of know one. So we go down, walk in the office, and absolutely, Kevin and John Lehman were friends. I mean, John Lehman got up behind his desk, came out to the table that he has there in the office, and we sat down and had talked for about 15 minutes. Near the end of the time we were with him, he asked us and what we thought about the equipment that the Blue Angels was using. I mentioned that the Thunderbirds had gotten the F-16, And I was of the opinion that maybe we should put a more modern version of airplane on display. Well, the Secretary Layman said, well, Al, I can't put a multi-million-dollar weapon system out here for a demonstration team. It's just not cost-effective. I said, well, sir, there's 8 F-18s at Pawtucket River that were in the test and eval program. They don't have a weapon system in it. They're finished with the test and eval. They'd make perfect Blue Angel airplanes. Long and short of it is, finished that conversation. Dismissed, we went on about our way, and a month or 2 later, something like that, Secretary Layman was down in Pensacola for an admiral's retirement, and the team, the Blue Angels, we were braced up against a wall at the entry point where he was going to be walking past. And as he came through and he walked through, he spotted Doc, and he came over to he and I and said that what we were talking about in the office, we're going to do it. So it's kind of like the grain of sand that builds to a pearl, you know. So it took a few years for it to evolve, but that was part of the beginning of the move toward going to the F-18s and the Blues. So there's just a general camaraderie of a unique group that once you are one, you're always going to be one. So, and it has entry level is high, but once you're there, there's nothing like it in any place in the Navy that I know of. If you say, I can do it, or you say, I cannot do it, you're right in both occasions. So if you set your mind to do it, figure out a way to happen, and it will happen. Just keep striving for perfection. I didn't say it's just going to be handed to you on a platter. It never is. You earn everything you ever get in life.